It took a hearty attitude today to trudge out to the field where the new Baptist Children's Home will stand by the end of the year. It was a dusty, windy day, but it was worth it. The $3.5 million complex will be home for 50 kids. Groundbreaking day is always something special.
That in the years that lie ahead, we might see the greatness of the blessing of God upon this work as we enrich and encourage and support and share in the lives of children.
Come in now. All right, everybody, everybody up. Come on now. Is everybody ready?
It was a time of reflection for everyone involved with the Baptist Children's Home. Today's groundbreaking in this empty field must have been much like the groundbreaking for the original home at 63rd and Penn 77 years ago. That location was open farmland too. It started off with as few as 3 children. It soon grew to house as many as 200. In those days, it was chartered to take care only of orphans. Now the home cares for those who need help from other problems as well.
Sean, bring your other things over here. Your friends are almost here.
It was a bittersweet day for 64-year-old Betty Bishop. She came here as an orphan teenager in 1930. She loved working with youngsters so much, she made this home her life's work.
I've never had any children of my own, so that way I feel like these are mine. Even though they aren't really mine, I feel close to them and feel like they are. I love you.
The cottage where Betty lives will soon be leveled. Luxury condos will take its place. But she's used to that. She's been saying goodbye for 40 years now. She's used to saying goodbye to her kids. That's hard enough. But now she must say goodbye to her job, her home, her memories.
John.
John.
Back in the...
Betty says no matter how many times she says goodbye, it never gets any easier. Mark O'Neill, Action 4. What an assignment. Go to the zoo and do a story on gardening. Right. I'll interview Cheetah the chimp on banana farming. My editor mentioned something about an exotic fertilizer here called Zoo-Doo. Sounds more like an Olivia Newton-John movie to me. Who cares about this elephant offal anyway? Well, apparently a lot of people are interested in Zoo-Doo. When we arrived at where the compost heap was supposed to be, all we could see was people furiously digging away at this amazing organic substance. It looks like Zoo-Doo could become an endangered feces. Anything different in this zoo stuff than regular barnyard
It all
stuff?
stinks.
No, I don't know anything about this. Anything at all, but I'm going to try it on my garden.
You think it might grow some elephant-sized tomatoes?
No, it ain't going to do that. We don't have elephant-sized tomatoes in this country.
Is that a new dance step you're trying out there?
No, just trying to get out to do it, off the shoes.
Well, this Zoo-Doo story turned out better than I thought. Met a lot of interesting people, saw some things I've never seen before, but there was one thing they forgot to tell me about on this story. Never learned this in journalism school. Mark O'Neill, Action 4 at the City Zoo.
First, firefighters were called to the 3800 block on Southwest 23rd to find this mobile home engulfed in flames. Dinah Rhodes and her 4-year-old son were at home at the time of the fire. She was slightly injured and was treated and released from Baptist Hospital. The blaze did some $18,000 damage to the Rhodes home, while a nearby trailer received an additional $4,000 in damages. The 4-year-old toddler apparently had been playing with matches in the living room of the home. Nearby neighbors saw the fire and took action.
Grab this hose here, tried to spray it. I tried to get the front door handle come off. We tried to pry it open. We couldn't do that, so he went around here, and I was trying to spray the house. And then I'd run around there, and she was out, her hair was singed. And the boy was standing there, and I grabbed the boy, and we'd run around here. We'd run around here, and they had Miss White to go ahead and call the fire department.
Moments later, firefighters were called to yet another house fire on Southwest 42nd Place. Firemen quickly put out the blaze, but not before it could do some $12,000 in damage. The cause of the fire to the 800-square-foot structure has not yet been determined, and no one was injured. Roy Godfrey, Action 4.
It only cost 1,000 pennies to attend this dinner next door to the Skirvin. It was a casual affair, meant to show the Republicans next door that Democrats could rally around the flagpole also. State Democratic Chairwoman Obera Bergdahl summed up what most Democrats were thinking at tonight's dinner.
Saying to Mr. President, please take a look at some of the things that you are doing. Please take a look at the highest deficit that America has ever had and see what we can do about this. Please take a look at where you're cutting and what you're doing. You know, it seems to us sometimes that we're really doing more harm to the people that can't really help themselves, and that is the young and the old. So we're just saying, Mr. President, please take another look at what you're doing.
Hey! Tony Stizza, Action 4, near the Skirvin Plaza.
Dawn broke over Ada, Oklahoma this morning, showing a scene of unbelievable destruction. There used to be about 130 mobile homes in this park. Now there is little more than torn and broken debris. Families sifted through rubble, salvaging what they could. Remarkably, some of the victims were almost lighthearted about the tragedy.
Found 2 dishes unbroken. That's about, there's one of my boots right there.
Yeah. Which one of these was yours?
That empty lot right there. So, just pick up and start over.
Not everyone could start over. One man died from his injuries. 35 others were taken to area hospitals. There was ample warning that the tornado was coming, but most people living in the park decided against taking cover, thinking the storm would miss them. You'd think this much destruction would be enough for one day, but it wasn't, because in Bartlesville, pretty much the same thing happened. A strip of downtown Bartlesville in northern Oklahoma was being thrown into the air just about the same time as the other storm hit the mobile home park. One difference, though, was the Bartlesville tornado covered more than twice as much ground. The damage estimate could go higher than $30 million, but to everyone's amazement, no one was killed.
I think we were all very fortunate and lucky, and the time of day had a big part in this. I think everybody was in a place where they weren't out in the open like they would have normally been.
There were some problems with looting at first, but state police and the National Guard sealed off the area and stopped it with some arrests. 57 people were injured in the storm, but only 3 were hospitalized. Despite the heavy damage, it could have been worse. There's a popular restaurant in town called Murphy's. Murphy's is usually packed about every evening at 7 o'clock with a line standing outside, but Murphy's is closed on Mondays. And it's a good thing, because this is Murphy's. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Bartlesville.
Saturday's campus brawl erupted as anti-Khomeini Iranians were trying to hold a rally in Dale Hall, a meeting designed to denounce the Ayatollah Khomeini and his revolutionary government. Instead, some 200 pro-Khomeini supporters arrived on the scene, and the fighting broke out. 14 injuries, including 2 campus police officers. 3 Iranians have been charged with rioting. 2 others face assault and battery and rioting charges. Members of the Anti-Khomeini Muslim Student Society say they have proof Khomeini supporters paid out-of-state Iranians $450 each to drive to Norman and break up the rally. The man with the hood says he can only talk about the incident if his identity is protected. If not, he says Khomeini backers will kill him.
They've always tried to get permits. They've always tried to cooperate, but they have always, if there's been any violence, it's because they've been attacked. We've been able to prove that consistently. But now I'm concerned with it's going to get worse. It's going to be attack with deadly force.
The Iranian conflict is a deep-seated political struggle. The Anti-Khomeini group says OU police and authorities are not prepared to deal with it.
The group says it will pass the information about the pro-Khomeini supporters onto the FBI. It wants to see them prosecuted, and it wants to see its own supporters, anti-Khomeini people, protected. Larry Otis, Action 4 on the OU campus.
Or during training and so forth, and yet we haven't been doing a legal definition of autopsy. So I looked at that and I thought, well, there was an Attorney General's opinion rendered which said there are 230 to 240 people just in the state of Oklahoma who have need for corneas so that they can see again, for eye surgery, transplantation of the cornea to the eye. I don't know the numbers of the pituitary dwarfs, but the reason the pituitary glands are removed is for the obtaining of growth hormone. Without the growth hormone, people do not attain anywhere near normal stature.
The slide of a crepe blouse worn with a pencil slip slash in. Leopard spots are printed on the pawnee velvet background of a thigh scraper. A thigh-rise design for a mini dress that makes a point of her 24-inch waistline. Yes, the mini makes a comeback, but it's only designed for those of you who have managed to stay in shape. Black designer Lester Hyatt.
At our barrow show yesterday, out of 1,920 barrows, our judge selected yesterday afternoon about 4:30 Mike Squires from Weatherford 4-H. In the reserve grand was a young lady down from Duncan, Donna Malloy, with her crossbed barrow. And in the sheep show, our judge, John Edward from California, selected from 1,536 wethers. The grand champion wether was a Suffolk shown by Charlie Price from Elgin 4-H. In the reserve grand was a Hampshire shown by Doug Divino from Lawton 4-H.
After a brief high-speed chase, a pickup truck carrying 3 juveniles crashed on an I-240 overpass. Oklahoma City police officers noticed the truck when it began cutting corners fast. Officials then attempted to get the driver to pull over when the chase started near 6th and Miller. It appeared the driver was trying to turn onto the interstate at 39th and May when he lost control and nearly went over the bridge, which would have been a straight drop onto a busy highway. There was a small fire that was quickly put out. Police estimate the truck was traveling between 80 and 100 miles an hour when it crashed. 2 boys in the vehicle were taken to Baptist Hospital. One is said to be in serious condition. The 3rd boy is expected to be treated and released. A quick check showed that the vehicle had not been reported stolen. Officials will notify the boys' parents and possibly file charges later on today. Ed Stewart, Action 4 in Northwest Oklahoma City.
We are go for main engine ignition. 8, 7, 6. We have main engine ignition.
Houston, now control 8, mission control confirms roll maneuver started. 20 seconds, thrust looks good.
Roger, sounds good.
26 seconds, roll maneuver completed. 30 seconds, 1 nautical mile in altitude, throttling engines down now up to 68% as programmed. 38 seconds, flopboard status looks good, mission control. 42 seconds, Columbia now 3 nautical miles in altitude. 46 seconds, coming up now to create a maximum aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. 55 seconds, pass through max Q, still looking good. Throttling engines back to 100%. Give it a go at throttle up.
Columbia, Houston, you're go at throttle up.
Mark 1 minute 10 seconds. Columbia now 7 nautical miles in altitude, 4 nautical miles downrange. Velocity now reading 2,700 feet per second.
Roger, 460.
Norman's Severe Storm Lab is one of 12 federally funded environmental research labs. April, May, and June turned the lab into a beehive of activity. To get set for storm months, engineers are rebuilding computer hardware in an effort to update sophisticated formats. Meteorologists are transferring wind data taken from a weather balloon onto magnetic tape. All of this activity is part of the annual spring program, when the lab gathers the bulk of its research material.
Ultimately, we'd like to learn enough so that we can think about interacting with a storm before it produces a tornado and maybe even keep that tornado from forming. We don't know enough now, but every spring we gather new data, and someday maybe that key piece of information that will help us in order to eventually mitigate tornadoes.
Technicians at the Norman Lab operate one of 5 Doppler radar centers in the nation. The Doppler dish is not just for research. Someday it may be for protection.
There is no doubt. It's just a question of when, not a question of if. We have bad tornadoes every spring. Last year we had one near Binger that weakened before it got to Oklahoma City. Some year a bad tornado like that is going to strike in the city, and hopefully we'll have the awareness and the public education that we can minimize the casualties.
Larry Otis, Action 4, Severe Storms Lab in Norman.
It was here on this practice field that Alan spent his last moments with his teammates. The young boy was carried from the diamond unconscious after being struck in the head by a baseball. 5 days later, students mourned the death of the youth. Flags flew half-mast, symbolizing the school's loss. That loss became even more apparent as friends arrived at St. Charles Catholic Church, just a mile from the baseball park. There were mostly students at the service, some who had shared growing up with Alan, others who had barely known him, but all mourning the death of one so very young. Sherry Sellers, Action 4. A practice like this one can become an open invitation for injuries. Often there's more than one ball on the field, more than one bat on the field, and even more than one player in a position, making it impossible to be aware of all that's going on around you. That's extremely dangerous when the balls these guys are throwing travel over 70 miles per hour. Taking that speed into consideration, it's remarkable that injuries in the game are normally minor, like pulled shoulders and elbows from reaching for those too high or too low balls. Coaches say these injuries are to be expected, but the unexpected has now happened, 2 fatalities.
You just think of how many people are playing the game of baseball and how few fatalities that we do have. Of course, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but I would say that these are pretty isolated incidents, and it just so happened that this happened in Oklahoma this spring.
Oklahomans questioning the safety of the game should realize there are specific game regulations designed to protect these young men, but there are no guarantees. Helmets are required to cover the player's head when up at bat or on base. Some people feel they should be worn at all times to cut down on injuries. But wearing the helmet more often may cause more problems. It's hard to hear with it on, and the weight of the helmet could change the player's natural movements. So the answer for now is for the player to be more alert and always know where the ball is. Sherry Sellers, Action 4 at Bronco Field. This morning, Michael Newberry testified on his own behalf. Newberry basically said the same things he had told authorities several times before as to his whereabouts the night Janella Garrett was killed. He said when he left the house, Janella was there alive with the 2 kids she was babysitting. Defense then called 3 more witnesses and rested its case. In closing arguments this afternoon, the prosecutor maintained that Newberry left the house where Janella was babysitting, went to the store to get paid by Mr. Nair, then returned to the house where he took Janella out of the home and brutally raped and killed her. But the defense said his client could not possibly have committed the crime because the defendant was on his way home to Oklahoma City when the young girl was killed. The defense also stressed that all evidence presented by the prosecution has been circumstantial. The jury is still out at this time determining the verdict for Michael Newberry, the man accused of first-degree murder. Carol Lambert, Action 4 at the Logan County Courthouse. This morning, trial resumed with the completion of the cross-examination of Ann Reed, a lab expert with the OSBI. District Attorney James Langley then rested his case against the defendant, Michael Newberry. After a short recess, the defense called Michael Newberry to the stand. The defendant testified that when he left the Nair's residence, where Janella was babysitting, she was sitting down at the kitchen table doing her homework. He then said he made 2 stops before returning to Oklahoma City, where he arrived shortly after 11 o'clock that evening. It was the same testimony Newberry had given authorities several times before he was arrested.
Well, one of the reasons is because a person called me and said that there was no verification for voting privileges. And so I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And as a consequence, I'm not registered in this precinct. However, I did go to the precinct where I was registered in, and I voted there. They didn't ask for identification, however, they do know me there. And then I thought, well, I'll just check this out, and I went to another one. And I went in, and under the pretense, of course, if they'd ask me anything, I would ask them where I could change my voter registration. They didn't ask me anything. They just asked, do you live in Oklahoma City? And I said, yes. They said, well, sign here and vote, which I did. And I signed both registers.